Hello Fantasy Faithfuls and welcome to Michael Thomas Fantasy Snapshot for 2020.
Kamara. Michael Thomas, the catch. Thomas, the touchdown for the Saints.
In 2020, Michael Thomas and the New Orleans Saints will be facing a group of teams that last year gave up 570 fantasy points to wide receivers in PPR, second most in the NFL with 13.5 yards per reception and 17 touchdowns on average. Breaking down his receiving, Thomas has the best target patterns in the league together with Odell Beckham and, funnily enough, Zach Pascal. This is a very good sign for future fantasy production, but not an end-all be-all, but tons of targets short left and deep right are great for fantasy. In connection with his catch rate, we see that he matches super well with the target patterns. He's far above the 60% benchmark in the short zones and even 88% deep right, which is insane. Finally, he has 10.8 yards per reception to the short left, his most targeted zone. He's just a machine in catching and gaining yards with no sign of stopping in these receiving trends. The opponent that fits his trend the best is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They gave up 9.1 yards per catch, and opposing receivers had a catch rate of 81% in the short left zone, so be sure to start him in that game for DFS. I would like to take a second to remind you to hit that like button, leave a comment what you think about this video, and subscribe to the channel. I love every interaction I have with y'all, and every little bit helps me put out even more content. Michael Thomas's one-game floor is 11.7 points and ceiling 29.6 based on the last 3 years. This ranks as the highest floor and highest ceiling for receivers, just pure domination in PPR, and the likeliness of him scoring above the ceiling and booming is massive at 7.5%, while his bust chance below the floor is fairly high at 4.2, but this is due to his floor being so damn high. His touchdown rate last year was 4.8%, 60th highest in the league, so he doesn't rely on touchdowns at all compared to a lot of other wide receivers, even if he still catches a lot of them. Based on my market share study, I have him predicted for 158 targets and for 116 receptions. I just can't see him replicate what he did in 2019. Michael Thomas was, after Lamar Jackson, the most usable player in fantasy last year, even more than Christian McCaffrey. You should have started him in 13 games, with the second wide receiver had 9 usable ones. His situation breakdown shows that he scores more points at home than away, which is very common for wide receivers. He also scores more when playing a bottom 16 air defense, again very common. And he is almost right on average against teams with winning and losing records, so very stable against good and against bad teams. Michael Thomas saw 22 red zone targets in 2019, and with those targets he scored 8 touchdowns, which is great. With 29% of his team's red zone targets, he shows no signs of slowing down. Only thing is 22 red zone targets for a guy with 185 targets is very low. The average risk of him not scoring above 10 fantasy points in 2019 was 13%, which is of course the lowest of any wide receiver by far, and I can't but to be very excited to draft him again in 2020, even if I don't believe he'll be quite as good. Based on his current ADP of 6th overall and all the numbers I've laid out in this video, I give him a draft grade of A. You gotta love Michael Thomas, even at this high price. You can't expect the same from last year, but you know he's a PPR god, and with Jameis Winston as Drew Brees' backup, you have insurance.
Open for the end zone, Michael Thomas. It's a Saints touchdown.
Hello Fantasy Faithful, I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to check out more of them right here and here. In case you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a beat.